side, and all you need to worry about are these two arrow keys.
Okay. You're going to do an intro, right?
Yes, I can welcome everyone. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everyone and welcome. This is Judy from the Pennsylvania Immigration and Citizenship Coalition. You're all here to attend the ITIN training that we have brought to you all in partnership with Ceiba, who really has been an awesome partner in our sort of finance guru. And we're so lucky to have them here in Philadelphia, but we're also lucky that they're so generous to share their wisdom and their expertise across the state. So I know we have a lot of Pittsburgh partners with us, so welcome. Again, my name is Judy. The training today will be led by Will Gonzalez and Diego Tapia from Ceiba. I'll let them introduce themselves. And just logistics, we do have participants in the room and participants online. If at any point, especially for those online, if you have any questions or any logistical problems, feel free to either email me, judykim@paimmigrant.org, or to the right side of the room, to the right side of your screen, you will see a chat box. Feel free to type in questions there at any time relating to the training itself or any logistical issues that you're having. So thank you, and without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Will Gonzalez from Ceiba.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you, PICC, for putting this together. Welcome everyone to what we hope is information about a gateway to asset building for unauthorized immigrants. I want to start first by saying that today is January 30th, and things are changing almost on a daily basis in this country. And I just want to make sure that any information, that information I'm giving to you is effective January 30th. Things could change. And as a matter of fact, we are expecting some changes which might not be too beneficial to this process. So we'll talk about that just so you know what to be on the lookout for. But I think I also want to emphasize the advocacy work that PICC is doing and to be plugged into that work because it's as important as knowing about these things is doing some of the advocacy work related to it. We're going to give you a lot of chance to ask questions. I think that's the most important part of these presentations. So I'll start off by talking for about 15, 20 minutes, and then we hope that there's a lot of question and answers after that. With me is Diego Tapia, who's the program director at Ceiba. I'm Will Gonzalez, the executive director of Ceiba, and Ceiba is a coalition of community-based organizations in the Latino community of Philadelphia. We come together on a number of fronts related to advocacy, but also related to asset building. By working together, we create economies of scale for the service provider and one point of contact for the client. And that's what we were seeking to do with this work around the ITIN, the Individual Tax Identification Number. So I'll begin by stating that undocumented immigrants are not excluded from the requirement to file taxes. The IRS created the ITIN to help people without Social Security numbers file tax returns. At least half of the unauthorized immigrants in the country are subject to payroll tax withholdings because they present a made-up Social Security number. I sometimes get around with the clients y le digo que tienen un número de seguro social mágico, a magic Social Security number. If they just use that Social Security number to work, it's not considered identity theft, but if they file a tax return, it is. And so it's very important, and some of the work that PICC does and Friends of Farm Workers does around protections against notarial fraud are really important because the wrong advice can get people into a lot of trouble. So if someone tries to file a return with that made up Social Security number, they can be looking for trouble rather than using the ITIN, which is relatively easy to get. In Pennsylvania in 2010, $34.8 million was collected from unauthorized immigrants through this payroll tax withholding. So the only way to recoup any excess taxes withheld from that holding is to file a tax return, do that with an ITIN. And we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts of applying for an ITIN soon. I just wanted to give you the overview. The earned income tax credit is not available to people who file their taxes with an ITIN. The earned income tax credit can give someone, a Social Security holder, up to $6,000, depending on their income. Please note that if there is a mixed status file return, that they're also precluded from getting the earned income tax credit. So let's say mom has a Social Security number, the kids have a Social Security number, dad has an ITIN, they file married filing jointly, they can't get the earned income tax credit. Sometimes notarios will give them bad advice, tell them to file head of household for the mom, and then 3 years later, dad gets a chance to apply for citizenship, and they need to show a tax return that they're married, but guess what? They don't have a tax return that shows that, so now they have to backfile. Now they have to pay back all the money they received the ITC, and now they have to answer to why was that claimed as when they knew they shouldn't. So there could be allegations that they fraudulently did it, and that can create some problems. So one of the reasons why Ceiba does what it does with tax returns is that there's a value to having an accurate tax return and a correctly prepared tax return. All the tax returns that we prepare and the ITIN work is at no cost to the client. We're part of the volunteer income tax assistance work of the IRS. So filing a tax return is the only way to recoup any excess payroll taxes withheld and to claim the child tax credit. Again, we're doing this on January 30th. There are efforts to not allow unauthorized immigrants to claim the child tax credit. We've been successful at fighting against that and hope that we can continue to retain the child tax credit for unauthorized immigrants' families. Why is that important? The Pew Hispanic Center determined that 45% of unauthorized immigrant households in the U.S. are couples with children, and 37% of all unauthorized immigrants were parents of children who are U.S. citizens. So there are 4.1 million U.S.-born children of unauthorized immigrant parents in this country. So to eliminate the child tax credit for unauthorized immigrants would really affect U.S. children. The IRS and some opponents to having ITIN holders claim the child tax credit will refer to instances of fraud by small notarios. Again, bad word. In the Midwest, there was a group of notarios that was fraudulently claiming the child tax credit for some folks, and that caused some problems. And again, the advocacy work is very important. Why would unauthorized immigrants file taxes? So, you know, there's a lot of people who try to avoid filing taxes when they have Social Security numbers, but here we have a group of folks who want to. And again, we're talking on January 1st, January 30th of 2017. So tax returns are the ultimate proof of household income. It's requested when U.S.-born children apply for CHIP, SNAP, college financial aid, etc. As now banks, utilities, service companies will let you open an account with an ITIN. And believe it or not, credit bureaus are tracking the credit of people with ITINs. We are blessed in Philadelphia to have Finanta, which provides mortgages for ITIN holders. Over the last 30 years, we've seen some financial institutions like Bank of America, et cetera, come and go on providing those mortgages. Citibank in some parts of the country. So it's important for some ITIN holders to be able to present a tax return as the ultimate proof of income. Some municipalities, including Philadelphia, accept the ITIN as a tax ID number for business licenses. So if they want to open a certain business, they present their ITIN as a tax ID number. There's a movement to have ITIN holders, people with ITINs, get driver's licenses. There's still legislation in Pennsylvania relating to that. Since 2007, Ceiba has helped unauthorized immigrants apply for 738 ITINs, file 1,440 ITIN-related returns, collect 1.5 million in federal and state tax refunds. We've saved over 432,000 in ITIN application and tax prep fees, and we've helped people pay $675,234 in federal and state taxes. One point here is that we also help people who have cash income. So they end up 99% of the time having to pay taxes close to almost 25%, 30% of what they earn. So if you have a person who earned, let's say, $20,000, they will pay close to $4,000. And why would they pay that? Again, they want to have a tax return. They want proof of income. They want to show good moral character with Homeland Security and Immigration Services. And so they're paying for it. I think another important thing that we'll talk a little when we get into the nuts and bolts of the ITIN is that, and again, we're talking again, January 30th, 2017, there's a special treaty between Mexico and the United States that allows people in the United States to claim dependents who they support in Mexico as a dependent in their tax return. So if I have my mom in Mexico, my son in Mexico, even though they don't set foot in the United States, I can claim them as a dependent on my tax return, as long as I get them in ITIN, and we also help with that. And Diego and I will talk a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of that a little later. The ITIN also is used for business loans, believe it or not. Again, entities like Finanta provide those type of loans through circle lending and unorthodox ways of building credit for immigrants. Over those, since 2007, we've used the ITIN as a gateway to asset building and had some nice successful stories. One of them is Felicitas. She came in, applied for an ITIN. We helped her file her taxes. We connected her with partners. Again, it's a gateway to asset building. From the Welcoming Center to Finanta to some other small business development. She got some counseling about that. She joined a savings program. She had some consumer protection issues, so we worked with Community Legal Services, Philadelphia Legal Assistance. She attended asset building workshops. She received housing counseling, and some of the advocacy around the housing counseling. Housing counseling is a major HUD program nationally, and unauthorized immigrants are entitled to receive housing counseling. The agencies that provide that service are entitled to claim those services to those clients under their contracts with HUD. And the city of Philadelphia was not making their housing counseling agencies as aware of that. And we helped educate the city of Philadelphia that those agencies should claim them under their contract and that the city of Philadelphia should accept them as services provided. City of Philadelphia provides a $500 closing, a settlement grant for those when they close on the sale of a property. That money is not from federal origin, it's from the coffers of Philadelphia, so unauthorized immigrants can claim that. So we helped Felicita save to buy a home, and she became a homeowner. Again, this didn't happen overnight. This happened over a period of 3-4 years, but it happened. And it's slow, measured steps and dedication by the client. Another success story was Marcela and her son. She came to apply for an ITIN. Interestingly enough, the father of her child came to apply for an ITIN. And since she wasn't working, she didn't know that she could get an ITIN too. Again, if you're going to be a dependent on a tax return, in this case, the father of her son, they weren't legally married, didn't know that since he's supporting her, he can claim her on his tax return. And so we got an ITIN for her. We asked her date of birth, And we said, do you qualify for DACA? And she's like, what is that? And so she enrolled in a GED program. We connected her with Esperanza Immigration Legal Services, and she started the process of getting DACA. At the same time, she was having issues in getting her child into a Head Start program, the North Square Children's Center. They needed proof of income. The tax return serves as proof of income. She started to attend asset building workshops. She got DACA. She gets permission to work. She receives housing counseling. Now she's saving to buy a home. Now, obviously, we need to keep her aware of what's going on with DACA. Her child is in the Head Start program, and they're doing well. So again, we don't do the taxes as an end to itself. It's a gateway. You know, you apply for the ITIN, you file a tax return, we connect you to asset building resources. That includes public benefits for which your U.S.-born children may qualify for. People are not aware that they can apply for food stamps for the children. The children need to show household proof of income. The tax return serves as that. One of the reasons why we wanted to do this webinar is we think that this is a model that could be replicable in other communities. We don't want to be I-10 Pennsylvania. We just want to do the Latino community in Philadelphia. So other communities in Philadelphia are interested. We can work with you, and I know PICC is interested in nurturing that too. So we can work together to create that type of these type of services in other communities, not only within Philadelphia, but outside of Philadelphia within the state of Pennsylvania. So I wanted to now move to the nuts and bolts part and open the floor for questions, I'm sorry, and also bring in my colleague, Diego. The next slide shows and has a lot in there. It's heavy. I think they shared this brochure with you. So you have it. I know Julie shared it with everyone. And it gives you some basics about what is an ITIN. And we'll go through this, and I'll stop for some questions. Okay. So obviously we talked about what the ITIN is. It cannot be used to work. Okay. So if you present this to your employer can input it into his system, but in a matter of weeks, your employer will receive a letter from the Social Security Administration saying, hey, that number that your employee Will Gonzalez presented is not a Social Security number. Please look into it. Please send me a Social Security number. What we've seen, however, is that there's been not much enforcement by the Social Security Administration. So some employers are encouraging their employees to go ahead and get the ITIN, and they just put it in. And we've actually seen W-2s, which is a proof of earnings and withholdings, done with an ITIN. I think one of the key things is that the IRS cannot share information with immigration authorities that they collect. That is a law as we speak today. So it's an ironclad law. And so unless there's a special court order, that information cannot be shared. We talked about why should someone file a tax return. And that's reiterated there. And we talked about applying for ITINs for family members. And so usually the clients think that if they work, they can only apply for themselves, but they forget that their live-in mother of their children, although she's not working outside of the home, does not have an income, she could be claimed as a dependent. We also know that a lot of families support either their children or their parents back home. They can claim them. So we reiterate that when we meet with them and when we do their return. How do you apply for an ITIN? So it's filling out a form. It's called a W-7 and doing a tax return. Now, there are other ways to get an ITIN if you are involved in some certain investments. Obviously, our work is around low to moderate income taxpayers. So if you're part of some investment group, and obviously your entity needs a tax ID number, they're not going to give you a social security number. They might not give you an employer identification number, but they'll give you an ITIN. But that's way beyond the scope of this, and those are some special circumstances. If you go to the next page, which is the reverse of our brochure, it talks about what documents do you need to bring to your appointment to secure and apply for an ITIN. A passport is the ultimate document. You present a passport that has all the information we need for the W-7, and we fill that out. The easiest part of this process is a W-7. It's a one-page document, but it's the tax return that, again, as a VITA site, as a volunteer income tax assistance center, you're not going to see a tax return that's any different, except that you need to be aware that you can't claim the earned income tax credit. Salud. We've seen, I know our friends in Casa San Jose and Just Harvest in Pittsburgh were able to come together where one entity was doing the follow-up and the education around the ITIN and gathering the documents, and another entity was doing the tax return. And so those type of relationships could be fostered to get some of this work done. In the absence of a passport, you would need to always present two documents, and that would be a national identification card, a foreign voter ID, the matrícula consular, and then you always must present a birth certificate. Again, if you can't present a passport, which is the ultimate document to apply for an ITIN, you need to then present two documents, which include a birth certificate and another document. When it comes to children and the absence of a passport, it gets a little bit more complicated, because if it's a child under 6 years old, there's some medical records that need to be gathered. And the medical records now, according to the IRS, must include specific information. And you see it there. It includes the name, address, phone numbers of the doctor, hospital, or clinic where the treatment was performed. That's sometimes difficult when it comes from a foreign country to ask for that specific information. If they're older than 6 and younger than 18, we want a school report card in addition to the birth certificate. As a certified acceptance agent, say with a certified acceptance agent, we do not have to mail those original documents with the application. We can fill out a form certifying that we saw the documents, that and we can just include a copy. In the absence of that status as a certified acceptance agent, you would need to send those original documents. To get an ITIN, it takes about 6 weeks to process. If you owe money to the IRS, they first will issue the ITIN over that 6-week period, and then 4 weeks later, they would ask for you to start making payments. You can make a payment arrangement with the IRS. You can pay it all at once. The IRS has a great Spanish language line. There's other documents in terms that you need to submit if you do not have a passport, together with the birth certificate. I want to pass now the mic to my colleague Diego Tapia, who can talk a little bit. Oh, okay, we have a question.
Very quickly, the passport, does it have to be valid or just expiring, or just a passport?
Yeah, so a very good question here. They asked, does a passport need to be valid? Yes, the passport has to be a valid passport.
Not expired.
Not expired, yes. And in some situations, we may also need, for proving that the children are here, if there was a visa, right? Don't think if you don't have a visa stamp on your passport, you're out of luck. No, it just helps. It just helps. As we know, there are situations where someone got an entry. One of the items that we need to fill out is your date of entry into the country. So that is very important part of the ITIN application. And so if you did get in with a visa, having that helps. But if you didn't, don't worry. We just put down the information that you give us. But I wanted to pass the mic to my colleague, Diego Tapia. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask questions, and Diego and I can answer. But I wanted him to go over more about what documents you need to bring, and also talk about the renewal process. Starting as of last year, they asked that that ITIN holders who've had ITIN for over a certain period of time need to renew. And so Diego can talk a little bit about that. So without further ado, here's Diego Tapia.
Thank you, Will. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about, as we mentioned, about what documents are needed in order to apply and also now to renew the ITIN. As Will was mentioning before, in December 18, 2015, the Protecting Americans from Tax Hikes Act was enacted, and there were some changes. There were significant changes to the ITIN program. So now some ITINs, all the ITINs that were issued before January 1st, 2013, will or must be renewed. There's going to be a schedule for the renewal process, but there are some ITINs that are already expired. So the IRS in October 2016, October 1st, 2016, the IRS started the renewal process of the ITINs. So right now, there are two groups of ITIN holders that need to renew the ITIN. The first group is the taxpayers with ITIN, which the middle digits of the fourth and fifth digit of the ITIN are 78 or 79, must be renewed again. The fourth and fifth digit of the ITIN is either 78 or 79, must be renewed. Well, they were supposed to be renewed by December 31st, 2016. We know the more than 300,000 letters to people that need to renew the ITIN were sent to taxpayers, but only even less than half of the people that received those letters have renewed the ITIN. So people then did not renew with the digit 78 or 79, then they didn't renew the ITIN before December 31st. They need to do it now and do it before they do. They file the tax return for 2016 tax return. Also, the second group, they need to renew the ITIN before they file the tax return, is the people that didn't use for the past 3 years. If the person didn't file taxes in 2013, 2014, or in 2015, they also need to renew the ITIN, even if the number, the middle digit, the fourth and fifth digit numbers are 78 or 79, they have to renew. So those are the two big groups that need to renew the ITIN now before filing a tax return and for the tax year 2016. So also again, people then renew, they apply for ITIN and receive an ITIN before January 2013 will have to do it, but the schedule for the renewal has not been released yet. So we need to keep, everybody needs to keep, ready to read the news and be active, asking groups that are involved with the IRS and ITIN matters about the new schedule for the other taxpayers, and will need to renew the ITIN. Also, we want to talk about the changes that were made in reference to the papers that need to be presented to apply or to renew for the ITIN. The difference between the renewal and the ITIN application It's then the renewal. In order to renew the ITIN, no tax return is needed to be submitted to the IRS. So the only thing that needs to be submitted is the W-7 form. There needs to be the revision 9/2016 form W-2 that needs to be used. If a person renewing the ITIN use a different form, an older version, the ITIN application will not be approved. It's going to be rejected. So talking about again about the documents that needs to be presented. People applying the ITIN for ITIN can present, again, the passport is the only standalone document that allows a person, an applicant, to receive the document that needs to be submitted in order to receive the ITIN. Before, for the taxpayers, spouse, and dependents, the passport can be used without any issues. Now, with these changes, the changes made at the end of December 2015, now the dependents also will have to, even if they have a passport, they may have to submit additional documents. So people, for dependents, then have a passport, but they didn't enter to the US, there is no date of entry in the passport, they will have to provide an additional document proving then the dependent is here in the US, except for people or dependents that live in Mexico or Canada. They do not have to present additional documents. But if the dependent is from another country, they will have to present the passport. And if the passport doesn't have a date of entry to the US, they will have to present, for children 6 years old or younger, they will need to present either vaccination records from an institution from the US. If the applicant is younger than 18, they would have to submit the passport in record or for education record for US facility. And if the person, the dependent that is applying for, I think it's over 18, they can submit the passport, and also you can present bank account statements, they can present school records, or other utility bills, something that proves then the person, the applicant, is even here in the US. So those are the main changes. Again, I think are expiring in some of the documents. Now also more additional documents will be needed in order to apply for the ITIN. In order to renew the ITIN, they have two options again. Right now, the people they have the ITINs that are expired, they can do it either choose send first the ITIN renewal, or they can renew the ITIN when they file the 2016 tax return. That means then when they file the 2016 tax return, they will have to attach the ITIN application. The numbers are not going to change. The ITIN number is going to be just renew. It's not going to, the number is not going to change. So the numbers are going to stay the same. But again, if an ITIN was not renewed, there is not going to be processed the tax return. So the tax return is going to be just old, and it's going to be processed just after the renewal was received. That may affect if the taxpayer doesn't do the renewal. Some of the credits may not be available, and they may end owing additional money to the IRS. So there are different forms to apply for ITIN, depending on the location and also circumstances of the applicant. The first thing that they can do, they can mail the Form W7 or the ITIN application, and they can mail with the original documents. So let's say then if they have the passport, they go, they want the person renewing, they want to do it on their own. They can do it, complete the Form W7, attach the original document, and send it to the IRS. This is the first form. The second form, they can go to the IRS. They can go to acceptance agents like Ceiba, where basically the acceptance agent is gonna certify the we saw the original documents, in no passports, no birth certificate needs to be submitted. Another change that was made in reference to the acceptance agents. The acceptance agents is able to certify only passports and birth certificates. If additional documents needs to be submitted, we need to submit the original documents. For instance, if for a dependent child who doesn't live in the US, or Mexico, or Canada, is claimed, they need to submit the vaccination records or bank account statement or any other document that shows that the person is living here in the US. And the third option that they have, the people have to apply for an ITIN, it's going to the IRS Taxpayers Assistance Center. There are different centers here in Pennsylvania. Not all of them provide this assistance. So you need to call them to make an appointment and explain that you want to apply for the ITIN. So going to the IRS, they will be able to, again, certify that they saw the original documents, and they will submit the application without having the applicant to submit the original paperwork. We have a question. We have a question. If we file an ITIN return without a W7, but there is a renewal requirement, will the return be rejected? The return won't be rejected, but it was placed on hold. So they are going to wait until the taxpayer renew the ITIN, then they will process the tax return. Again, if no renewal information is submitted, of course, what they are gonna do is choose if there is any credit and the taxpayer may qualify. They are not gonna grant those credits, and the taxpayer may end owing a bigger amount, or the amount of the credit just won't be granted. I'm going to also explain a little bit more about it.
Thank you, Diego. I just wanted to add something that's important to know. The PATH Act also said that you could not retroactively claim certain credits, and that includes the child tax credit. So the importance of filing before April 18th is critical. So if you send a return before April 18th, even if they haven't had a chance to verify the renewal or to process it, it will be stamped as received before April 18th. And they could get, if they are eligible, the child tax credit, which could be up to $1,000 or a little bit more per child who lives in the United States, depending on the income of the taxpayer. So filing early in doing things is more important than ever. Before the PATH Act, we could technically file a I-10 return and the person can claim credits all the way 3 years back. But now they're so strict that even within the same year, they won't grant the credits. Another thing is I wanted to please, and I know this is a lot of information, please be aware that the brochure that you see is available on Ceiba's website. Please also notice that there's additional I-10 resources that you can get. So don't feel that that we're going a little too fast or we're giving too much information that you're missing something. That's, you could also feel free to give us a call. Our information is there too, but there are great resources, and this for sure gives you some of the information. Last but not least, we want to make sure that there's a distinction between a renewal and a first application. When you're making your first application, a tax return needs to be attached to the application. Just doing a renewal by itself, you could just do the W-7 form. There's no need to do a tax form. However, we're in the period for taxes, right? And so at this time of the year, usually they go together. And last but not least, the notarios. There's, as you can see, this information is not linear. It's not easily digestible. And people will go to a notario with any type of document and say, I want this. And the notario for $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 or more will put any document together and throw it at the IRS and then say, oh, they didn't accept it. We need to do more. And with the 6-week window of time that these things take, people get tired or don't follow up. Last but not least, you'll see some scams on the internet that says they can get you an ITIN through the internet. You can't. No one can get you an ITIN in the internet. No one can get you an ITIN for less than 6 weeks. So just be wary. There are some good entities out there that do a good job and charge. God bless them. But we need to be wary of that. And I'm passing the mic back to Diego. And if you have a question,
Okay, answering to the question, then Christy sent us, will they, Christy is asking if taxpayers will get a letter saying that they need to renew or why their return isn't processing. People with the I think middle digit 78 and 79 already received letters. The letter was sent back in September. The letter is the 5821. So people with ITINs, they are going to expire again with middle digit 78 and 79. They were supposed to receive letters. People that didn't file taxes for the past 3 years, they are not getting any letters. So people need to be aware. We need to inform people. And if they haven't used the ITIN for the past 3 years, they will have to do it regardless if they receive or didn't receive letters. So again,
and I don't know if we answered the question. I think the question is, if we submit a tax return without a renewal, but we needed to submit a renewal, will they let us know that a renewal is needed? And it is my understanding that yes, they will. And so the mailing address is going to be really important. When you use a certifying acceptance agent, the certifying acceptance agent also receives a copy of that renewal. There's a list of certified acceptance agents on the IRS website. If you go to irs.gov, they have a very good, a lot of information in various languages too, not only English and Spanish. And also you can call the IRS hotline, the IRS number, which is tough nowadays at this time of the year. But if you can get through and you can ask. But yes, they should get a letter saying, hey, we can't finish your return until you renew.
Is any other questions so far?
The ITIN is different from the number, or let me rephrase the question. Can people with the ITIN also use that for the local taxes, like Philadelphia tax bills, right?
So the question is, can people use the ITIN as a tax ID number locally? That all depends to your local jurisdiction, right?
Okay.
So in Philadelphia, yes. In Philadelphia, yes. And so I've had people come in and get the ITIN because they want to open an auto body shop. They want to do a small business that needs a license from the Department of License and Inspections. And yes, you can present that ITIN number to the Department of License and Inspections as a tax ID number.
Mm-hmm.
I know, go ahead.
Is that different from the EIN number?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
because an EIN number is a tax ID number for an entity. So, and it's interesting you brought that up, because I know an attorney who combined a group of unauthorized immigrants into a corporation. So that when technically you hire that corporation to do maintenance, you're hiring the corporation, and the corporation pays its shareholders with, you know, in a different way. So, so yes, so without, if you are a sole proprietor, yeah, that's your tax ID number. The question.
So for applying to receive the child tax credit, do they have to be working?
Okay, so the question is, to get the child tax credit, does someone have to be working? So they have to have earned income, right?
Okay.
And that earned income could be, yes, working. So is it cash income, or is it as an employee? A lot of our clients are really not independent contractors, but they're treated as such. Some of them may get what's called a 1099, or just outright not get anything. And so they come to us asking, how do I prove my income? And remember that the tax return is a sworn statement. So we say, you got to give us your good faith estimate of what you earned. We also then help them to kind of keep a note every week of what they pay or what they earn, so that at the end of the year they can pay. But yes, to get the child tax credit, you have to have earned income, and the child must be in the United States and must live with you in your home. So, yes.
What's the age?
16, right?
Yeah, younger than 17.
Yeah, so or younger than 17. The question was, what's the age limit to claim the child tax credit? Younger than 17. But again, on the child tax credit, please be aware that it's on the chopping block for unauthorized immigrants. It survived the last round. I think they can still claim, I think unauthorized immigrants still have the right to claim it up until next year, hopefully. But there are winds of change, and we need to educate our legislators that this can have a disparate impact on US-born children. Another question.
Did I hear you saying that the earned income credit is not available for ITIN filers?
Yeah, so the question is the earned income tax credit not available to ITIN filers? And correct, it is not.
Okay.
And we see situations, I kid around with Diego sometimes, say that it would be great to either have a minister to marry people, or a divorce lawyer to divorce people. And again, you don't make those decisions just on taxes. But if you have a married couple, mom and pop, and one has an ITIN, they can't claim the earned income tax credit. So, and again, some people will then forget to mention that they're married, but the IRS is getting better and better at catching those situations. And, you know, with making this presentation out of PICC, and our friends at HIAS send us clients who, you know, all the places that help immigrants with their status. And sometimes the client goes, oh my God, I filed for the earned income tax credit 2-3 years, saying that I wasn't married. Now I have to prove that I'm married, and then they have to pay that back. And it's sizable. So.
The other question is, I guess that, you know, in preparation of this, or I mean, taking part of this, is also to certainly increase the pool of organizations that can offer their constituents this service. Can you talk a little bit about how to, how to go about that? You know,
Yeah.
Do you have to be certified by IRS? You know.
So a very good question. It says, hey, you mentioned ways to increase the local capacity for organizations to do this type of work. Can we talk a little bit about that? So yes. One, I think the key ingredient is the volunteer income tax assistance. So how does one become a volunteer income tax assistance center? So every volunteer income tax assistant has to be certified on a yearly basis to do taxes, and that's on a yearly basis, 25-hour training. It's not rocket science. When you deal with unauthorized immigrants, however, you need to do the advanced, so that might be more like 30, 35. If you use big cities like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, there are already VITA agencies. In Philadelphia, Ceiba does it, Pathways PA does it, the Campaign for Working Families does it. So finding someone who can help, the AARP does it. Finding a VITA help is not impossible. Also, like Diego mentioned, you can actually go to the IRS and get some help. I think the key, however, is that many of those places only are around during the tax season. And since it takes 6 weeks, at least, to process the ITIN, you need to have a relationship with that client, because that client has to return to you if there is a problem with the application. And again, because we do it for free, that we do things correctly, there's no monetary incentive for us to just throw any piece of paper at the IRS. So we never submit a return. We never submit an application until we know that all T's are crossed and all I's are dotted. The client, however, has to return to the tax place to get their Pennsylvania state tax return filled out. And that can only be done after they get their ITIN number. So what we have seen or encouraged is, if you don't have, as an entity, the capacity to do both the taxes and the W-7 and to provide the follow-up, then maybe you combine forces with a VITA site who you bring in to do the taxes. So you bring in the client, you educate the client about what they need to bring, educate what the ITIN is for. We require all new clients to go through a half-hour, 45-minute session about the ITIN, so we answer all the questions. And we do that as a group. And then when they want to file their tax, we get them also ready to file the taxes. So what we've seen in some places is you could do that as an organization, provide that workshop, get all the documents ready, get all the clients ready. Then you bring in the VITA people to do the tax return. They send out the tax return with the W-7, and then you are there to follow up 6 weeks later when the Pennsylvania return needs to be done, and the VITA site can have that Pennsylvania return ready for you to just write in the numbers, or to troubleshoot any problems related to the application that you can work with the VITA site. You can advocate for your client with the VITA site. So that's one way of doing it. You can, however, do the whole kit and caboodle, and there are entities like the IRS. We can also help you with giving you the blueprints to do something like this. And I think PICC is also, and other entities are looking to encourage that, because there's a demand in this in communities. I don't know if that answered your question.
I have a question. So you talk about that only Mexico and Canada, that the dependents can be in their own country, they don't be present here. So if a taxpayer and the spouse is in China and the spouse apply for ITIN.
Okay, so the question is about the Mexico and Canada being the only two places where you can have dependents who are not in the United States, and you can ask to apply for an ITIN for them. And the question I want to reiterate is, if the spouse, if let's say one person is here but the spouse is in China, can you claim an ITIN for that spouse in China? So that's a very good question. So in the case of a spouse, be it in China or any other country, yes, you can. However, you have to take into account that now, if that spouse has any income in their home country, then you need to do a kind of like a worldwide income return. And that goes outside of the scope in terms of the taxes. So VITA places, volunteer income tax assistance entities, can only do tax returns within a certain scope. So let's suppose a client comes in and is a businessman who sells and buys homes and wants to apply for an ITIN. God bless him, but we can't do that return. So what we usually do is we say you go to an accountant who can do that return. When it comes to worldwide income, if the spouse in the other country is earning some income, that needs to be put on the tax return.
But if there's no income,
If there is no income, yes, then that's one of the exceptions because it's a married filing jointly. And so then you need to prepare the document, have the document mailed to the person, then they have to sign it and bring it back.
yeah, because it seems like a lot of pay preparers, they would not offer that as an option for maybe like the clients here and they have spouse overseas and they're applying their spouse to come over here. It seems like they only have them just do like married filing like separate.
Yes.
Is that
So you can also file married filing separately. But again, you don't then have the name of the spouse or make them aware that that's right. And yes, you're right, because the standard deduction for married filing jointly is $12,000, while married filing separately is $6,000, right?
Or, yes.
Yeah, $6,000. And so what is a standard deduction? So the deduction is the IRS says, I'm going to give you a break when doing your taxes. So if you're single, the first $6,000 will deduct. If you're married filing jointly, it's 12. If you're head of household, it's 9. So that means that they'll kind of cut your break. There's the itemized deduction, which is another subject altogether, that if you can itemize certain expenses, you can claim that. A lot of that is related to mortgage interest on your mortgage, or maybe if you have a catastrophic medical bills, and other things. But the question, again, was a good question, that there is, when it comes to the married, to the spouse, you can do that, but you must take into account the worldwide income.
So do the spouse need to be, there's no way they can be present if they're overseas. So when you talk about the passport, the documentations, can the husband actually bring it to like
Yes, so another good question is, so then how do we do that application? So what we do is we see the passport of the spouse who's in the foreign country. We prepare the document. We have, we arrange for the document to be sent to that spouse and signed. It can't be faxed. It has to be, old-fashioned signature. And then to verify, we can either do a Skype where we verify the person, looking at the passport or looking at the person, or in this case, it would be Skype. So there has to be there's a duty for us to verify that the person is who she is or he is. Again, we're not, there's a limit to it. It's not like we're going to be doing an investigation or a DNA test or, but we just need to do some due diligence according to what the IRS says. We've received forensic training by the IRS about making sure that the documents are valid when it comes to passports, especially. So there's some tools that they've given us to verify that the passport is a legitimate passport. But yes, that also applies to spouses who are here. We've seen situations where someone is given a visa to be a teacher here, to be a researcher here. Their spouse is allowed to come here. And even though that teacher or researcher has a Social Security card, the spouse doesn't, because that spouse may only have a tourist visa, no Social Security number. So we can then get an ITIN for that person who's here, technically here. And that way, when the researcher teacher is doing the tax return has a dependent, and that helps them again, with that. Any other question? So, Judy, we want to thank PICC. We want to thank you, and feel free to, if you have any other questions, you can send us an email. You can see our email there at info@ceibaphiladelphia.org. Those additional ITIN resources are really good. I encourage you to stay tuned to the work that PA is ready and PICC is doing, not only in the ITIN front, but in all the other fronts. Thank you for the opportunity, and let's keep moving forward. So here's Judy. There's one more question. I'm sorry. No? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to come back real quick on the renewal
Mhm.
or the new application?
The-
The renewal takes also 6 weeks.
So the renewal takes 6 weeks too,
And then the new application also.
but it also takes 6 weeks.
Now, people are filing with ITIN. Are they required to file on time, or they can also file the extension? Past the April 18 deadline and then file after.
They can
They can do that.
they can file with an extension, but now you're entering a territory where
Okay.
you don't want to lose the ability to claim the child tax credit if you are eligible for it.
Okay.
And there's certain income levels, right? But yes, you're not treated any differently than any other taxpayer except for the earned income tax credit.
Okay.
But you don't, with the PATH Act, you don't want a situation where it says, hey, you were supposed to do it before the 18th of April, so I'm not going to give you the child tax credit. And the child tax credit can make a big difference for low-income wage earners. Okay? Thank you, and here's Judy.
Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank a big round of applause for Will and Diego for. I don't know if you can hear the applause that everyone's applauding in here. We're really grateful to have them, and hopefully this is just the start of just having Ceiba as a resource. And you know how to reach me. You've received emails from me. If you have any questions or feedback about the training, please do send them my way. And we'll make this PowerPoint available to everyone who signed up for the training. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great day, and keep up the fight. Stay strong. We'll talk soon. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.